If there was any record from the past few years that made me nostalgic for farms in the Midwest I never was to, or reflect on my religious beliefs I never had, it was Ethel Cain's Preacher's Daughter. The general nostalgic sound of the record is what stuck with me the most, and what probably also led to it being as big a success as it was for an indie album. We should not forget though, it was quite a bold and peculiar record. At one point there are 3 songs in a row without singing on any of them, which is pretty much what you can look forward to on your most recent project, Perverts. Well, that looks like something fun for kids' birthday party. Perverts is like Preacher's Daughter, just without all the fun, and the rest as well. Effectively, this is just 90 minutes of drone, pressure and tension it puts on the listener that honestly goes so hard I would not recommend you listen to this alone or at night. The first song in particular has a type of field recording nature that draws you in and builds sort of tension that's just seems like there could be a jump scare at any moment. It reminds me of the Sinister soundtrack in that sense, although I also see a little group in there, which in some ways is closer to the album, although it's musically very different, if that makes sense. Just from the premise the album seems to get at, it's rather an opposition to a previous success. If we're looking for the emotional touch of the album, however, we're at what it represents for the listener. In that I see Perverts as a representation of grief or depression in musical form. It's a continuous presence of unwelcome noise that drowns out all the other sounds, which is mostly just her talking, so it's also spoken word in that way. And while it's in a way meditative, it's still always oppressive to the mood. But in that way, I feel it also falls short to other artists' representation, a similar feeling in different but also more welcoming and touching ways, honestly. Like Groupers dragging a dead deer up a hill, for instance, that confronts the feeling even more visual and effective, actually depicting the nice things that one is missing out on, but just hiding them behind like a veil, which for me at least is much more gripping on the emotional level. As much as the term not meant to be listened to is overused, it rings true here in another way than for these albums, for instance. In fact, Preacher's Daughter feels more raw in what it says about her, while for Perverts the main message seems to be rather in what kind of an album this is than what the music on the album itself has to say. Like flipping off the TikTok fans like, hey, I also do 90-minute long spoken words drone field recording albums. I love how they try to come up with genre names for this thing, by the way. Like when you come out with something like electroacoustic, that's kind of beautiful, honestly. Pervert to me can be read as a message to who Ethel Cain is as an artist, and that you'll never be able to guess her next step, which makes the album almost a social media post in musical form, declaring her artistic independence and her will to not be treated as a lesser sort of a pop star. And while I think it does succeed in that, it's quite little to make an album for, which might be a reason why some have labeled it as an EP and not an album, although it's like 90 minutes long, which is twice the length of an album, but that's not for me to decide. So those are my thoughts on Ethel Cain's Perverts. Let me know what yours are in the comments, and as always, listen to music.